Hi all, this is Allmighty and welcome to this video. In this video again we are covering a game from the Capablanca Marshall match. In this case we have Marshall as white and Capablanca as black. So this is round 5, and just to quickly tell you, I've skipped round 3 and 4 essentially because they were boring draws. So why is that? Because I believe that Marshall played more cautiously in those games as I could have seen from all the moves he played and everything, because yeah, it kind of shook him when Capablanca played that f6 move in round 2, as I've shown you in the previous video, and yeah, offered this queen, like all the usual things that he does in his games and why we actually love him. So yeah, also in third game he played the similar opening that he will play in this game, but with a little difference. So let's just move on to the game. So the current result is 1-0 for Capablanca, and he is looking for a next win, or Marshall is also looking to tie the match. But judging by his moves, I wouldn't say really. So as maybe some of you who don't know, Marshall was a d4 player. He played d4 very often. He also played it in the first and the third round. In the first round, Capablanca actually answered with a Tarrasch defense where he played c5 at some point. But in the third and now in fifth round, he plays the standard Queen's Gambit declined. Okay, now knight to c3, knight to f6, just developing pieces, bishop to g5, bishop to e7, unpinning the knight, e3, trying to develop this light square bishop, and now knight to e4. So a first move that kind of makes you think, because here Capablanca, obviously a guy who, as I've said multiple times now, wasn't really into openings, and he is just looking for some kind of a trick, something to go out of the line of theory to play against Marshall in this case, yeah, so that he doesn't just crush him because he doesn't know the openings. When thinking about this position and this game some years after this, so 10 and more years, when he was writing his book, he said that he would never play this move again. And why is that? Because at that point he was a much better player, more experienced, he know the opening theory even more, and yeah, I would also suggest to you guys never to play knight to e4 in this situation. But okay, bishop to e7, queen to e7, and bishop to d3. Also possible in this situation, c takes d5, knight c3, bc3, and after retakes you have queen b3, and now this queen is actually pressuring on d5 and b7, and black maybe has a little bit of a problem developing this light square bishop. But okay, instead of that, we have bishop to d3 here, and now knight takes on c3, b takes on c3. Knight to d7 developing, and now we just have developing normal moves, so nothing really to talk about here. Castles, queen to c2, okay, developing and attacking on h7, so h6 needs to be played, castles, and c5. So Capablanca would have played c6 or c5 or maybe even b6. He wanted to play c5 so that he takes as much space as possible in the center. Rook to e1, so if c takes d4, then e takes d4, and you have the rook on this nice file. But Capablanca has another idea. He takes on c4, bishop takes c4, and now b6, with the idea to putting the bishop on b7 on this strong diagonal. Queen to e4, first he attacks the rook and also prevents this bishop coming right away on b7, rook to b8 to defend it, and bishop to d3. Now he's also threatening to give a checkmate on h7, so knight to f6, defending that, and queen to f4, attacking the rook. So okay, bishop to b7, and in this position you can see that black already developed all of his pieces where he needs to. e4 expanding in the center, and rook f to d8, rook a to d1, and rook b to c8. And this is actually a really good position to study because both white and black developed all of their pieces, and in this case you have yeah, as I said, a good position to study and see if you count in all of the stuff, all the chess principles, like position of all of the pieces, positions of the of the pawns, the pawn islands, the strength of the pawn center, the safety of the kings. Take all of these things into account and try and judge the position. Who do you think is better here and why? My opinion, black is a bit better. I mean, generally, white has a stronger center, but just looking at the queens, yeah, this queen is much better than this queen. This queen it is on the king side, but white won't attack here anytime soon. So okay, we have rook to e3, and now yeah, the idea is probably a rook lift with keeping it on the third rank, maybe coming to g3 or h3 at some point when he moves the knight to try and attack on the king side. But Capablanca immediately takes advantage of this move. C takes on d4 and c takes on d4 and rook to c3. There aren't any discoveries with this bishop, so this rook is safe here, and the plan is to double up on the c file and yeah, have this c file controlled by black and his rooks. Okay, so now bishop to b1. Marshall gets afraid and makes a first mistake, because now Capablanca immediately plays g5, and in this position, okay, so the queen is attacked. If you move it, you have rook takes on e3, f takes on e3, and black just won a pawn. So after all of these exchanges, black is a pawn up, he has this strong bishop, and he is, I mean, if he keeps it until the end, he will win this game. So instead of that, Marshall capture with the knight on g5, and now rook takes on e3 first, because the rook was hanging on c3, and now again white has to make a decision. Will you take with the pawn or will you take with the queen? So Marshall took with the queen, but actually f takes on e3 was a better move. I will just quickly show you why. So it isn't a good idea in both situations to capture immediately on g5, because then queen just takes and gives a check, pushes, you can push even e5 maybe at some point, and yeah, white is I mean, he is still worse, because yeah, black has a piece, but then again, you have some problems, more problems that you should have, because instead of that you can play knight to h5, and now queen has to move somewhere. If it moves to, for example, g4, you can just take on g5. And after exchanges, now you have that pawn, you just bring the knight back, and yeah, it is much better to go out of this position with a pawn up rather than a pawn down. But okay, also possible queen takes on f7, either way, something like this, and give a check, something like this. So this is also one possible variation. But okay, he took with the queen here, and now knight to g4. He actually helped Capablanca a bit, because now the knight attacks with the queen with the tempo. Okay, he also was attacking the queen from h5, but then you have queen to f7. But this way, black cannot lose a pawn. So queen to g3 and queen to g5. h4, attacking the queen and also making room for this king to escape, maybe in some variations after this, and queen to g7. Yeah, backing up with the queen, but also attacking d4 pawn now twice. So this is a good move, and now queen to c7. Now Capablanca actually, so let's stop a little bit. Now I went through some of the variations maybe too quickly, but this is also a good situation where you can stop and see. Actually now queen to f6 was the best move, which would win the game immediately. I mean, this is kind of a stressful situation, I know from experience, and I would imagine, because the queen is essentially attacking two of your pieces, and there is no clear way how you can defend both. You probably can think, okay, now yeah, he just takes the piece back, I have to move the rook or something, yeah, and it's a problem. But okay, queen to f6, let me just quickly show you that. If queen takes on b7, now you can pause the video. Actually, there is a forced mate in 9. Yeah, so for those of you who just want to see it, it's queen takes on f2, king h1, rook takes on d4, with an idea to take on d1. So queen has to give a check first, king h7, now e5, discard check from the bishop, king to g7, and now queen has to go here to sacrifice, king takes on f8, and now rook has to move. If the rook doesn't move, then we'll just capture it, and yeah, this is, yeah, we'll just checkmate. So now queen takes here, king g1, queen here, king f1, and queen here. Now you have a couple of options. You can go e2, e1, or g1. If king to e2, you have this checkmate. And if king to e1, also this checkmate. But if king to g1, then you have also queen takes on c1 checkmate. So okay, just quickly wanted to show you this checkmate. And yeah, let's go back to this position. And here Capablanca actually played rook takes on d4. But Marshall now has this queen check, so don't take the bishop right away. First queen check, king to h7, and e5, discard check from the bishop. So now we are in a kind of a scary situation, because there is a check, and how will you defend this? Bishop to e4, strongest move, and now rook actually takes on d4, because this pawn is actually blocking this queen from the defense of the rook. And bishop takes on b1. And now you might imagine, okay, Capablanca missed pretty badly, and he is, yeah, back where he started essentially, because, okay, you have two pieces for the rook, but yeah, the queen is up there. Yeah, there could be problems. So actually here, this knight will essentially capture on e5 and will become a really strong knight, because this rook cannot protect the e5 pawn. There is no rook to e4 or rook to d5 to defend it. The queen can only defend it, and that is not enough. So because of that, Marshall takes on a7 and knight to e5. The threat is jump to f3, so rook to f4, and now bishop to e4. Again, you cannot take the bishop, because after this check, if you go on f1, there is a knight to d2, again with the forks. So beware of the forks. And if you go to h1, then you just have this check, and this is checkmate when the rook blocks. So okay, don't capture the bishop as well, rather he played g3. But now knight easily jumps to f3. King to g2 and f5. Again, Capablanca doesn't play the strongest move in the position, but it's an okay move. This move will haunt him maybe later in the game, because he could have just easily win this game by playing this maneuver. Knight h4 check, knight back, king g2, and knight g5. Now you're defending f7 twice, and when the king moves, you just need to play queen here and queen here, and this is easily winnable for black, because this knight is blocking h3, this bishop is taking over this diagonal, and white can do very little to prevent anything here. So okay, this was the idea. But Capablanca played f5 in this position, as I've said, and now there is queen to b6. Knight takes on h4 with check, king to h2, and now after knight to f3, he can actually capture. I mean, he could have captured before, but now after capturing and bishop captures, Marshall has queen captures on e6. And the whole idea here for Marshall is to try and get the draw as much, so any means necessary. But okay, now bishop has to defend on e4, because yeah, this is also one important pawn in this position, and you can probably also think about this is a good position to study. Black is winning this game, but he has to take a couple of things into account. This is a passed pawn, and you always need to take care of it. This is a free diagonal, and you need to somehow coordinate your bishop and your queen in some way to give some checks with an idea to win some material, or even push the king to a corner to checkmate. So this is the second thing. And also the third thing is always position your pieces in a way so that you can kind of always go back to a defense if it's necessary to your king, because the queen is always dangerous. Our king is not, so Capablanca's king in this position is wide open, and there could always be some checks. So okay, the game goes as follows. f3, with the idea if black captures on f3, then queen captures on f5 with a check and capturing the bishop, so bishop has to move to d3 or somewhere to actually stay and defend the f5 pawn. Queen to d5, again attacking the bishop and still attacking this pawn. Queen to b2 check, king to g1, and bishop to b1, moving the bishop out of harm's way. And now a4. So maybe you thought queen to f7 is a good move to give a check, but queen to g7 covers, there are no more checks, and when the queen moves, you have queen to g3. So you would have to rather just capture on g7. Instead of that, he pushes Marshall plays a4, and now queen to a1. With the idea, if I move the bishop, I can give a check and maybe pick up a queen or a pawn. Now Marshall has queen b7 check, and now we have a couple of checks by Marshall. Sorry, he played queen to b6, king h5, and king h2, getting out of the discovery. Bishop to a2. Yeah, moving the bishop out of the way, so also the queen can move here. Queen to b5 attacking this pawn, and now king to g6 defending it. a5 continuing the pushing the pawn. As I've said, you really have to be careful, so Capablanca really needs to be careful here so that this pawn doesn't go to a queen. Queen to d4, so with an idea is to jump maybe here, and now again with some checks, queen c6, queen is f6, queen e8, and queen f7. Now queen to c6 wouldn't work. I mean, this check, now the king can just move, so he played queen to a4, and in this position queen to e6 was played. So the idea is actually to jump to e2, and this is something, not jump, but go to e2, and this is something that Marshall actually missed. He played a6 in this position, and now queen to e2 check, king h3, and bishop to d5. There aren't any checks, so on c6 because of the bishop, and on e8 because of the queen, and the next move is to capture on f3 and give checkmate. So Marshall played a7, bishop captures on f3, and in this position Marshall resigned the game. So okay, let me just quickly show you why. If he, for example, still there are no checks from the queen, so if he goes and promotes, then queen to f1, king h2 for example, or king to h4, doesn't matter, queen to h1 is checkmate. So yeah, this one was a bit longer game, so I went yeah, a bit faster through the end game, but yeah, essentially as you could have seen, Marshall again made a mistake, and Capablanca noticed it right away and took advantage of it. So in this moment in the match, the result is after 5 rounds 2-0 for Capablanca, and he still needs 6 games to win to actually win the whole match. So there is a lot of obstacles in front of him, but yeah, as you can see, I don't think he broke his sweat playing the games until now. There is still time for Marshall to actually make him suffer in one of the games. Essentially what I could have seen in the first 5 games is that Marshall mainly didn't play any like aggressive moves or anything. He just more played for a draw than playing for something more. But okay, that being said, this is pretty much it for this video. I will come back in the next video again with the game from this match, and yeah, as I said, this is it for this video, and I would like to thank you for watching it, and I will see you next time.